I think a great question to ask, and occasionally I do ask it, but not very often. How can I serve you? And you can say that to friends. It doesn't have to be a work-related thing. You can say it to friends. You can say it to family. You know, they may look at you askance and you know, what the hell is he talking about? But you know, it's like there is. It's almost like, you know, how can I enrich your life in some way at this moment in time? You know, and if they may say, well, actually nothing, or I'd like a cup of tea, or you know, whatever it is.
It's a nice approach. Do you know the Grateful Dead song, Box of Rain?
No.
No, I was hoping you'd help me. The lyrics, yes. It's, what can I do to...
what can I do to make you love me?
No,
that's another one, isn't it?
No, that's,
yeah, sorry.
What can I do to help you, you know, to get through, you know? What can I do, you know, to help you get through? It's a great one. But it's basically, how can I serve you?
Yeah.
But it's phrased rather poetically.
Yeah.
And it is a nice approach, and that is a loving approach.
Yeah.
You know, we're not trying to be other people's fixers. We're not trying to be the solution givers. You know, we're not trying to be the person that others depend on. That's another type of ego kind of state that we could get into. We're actually just on a pure caring thing. You know, for something. You know, how can I help?
Because you were saying about loving yourself. You know, if you love. You know, if you go out with the intent of loving others, that's how you love yourself. You know, I mean, people say the first thing to do is to love yourself, and they say, well, how does that work? And for a lot of us, that's not easy, because it is getting off the self-judgment, the self-criticism, which takes time. I mean, I've been working at it myself, you know, and even now I'm still lapsing. Of course I am, you know. As my own coach says, you're human, Glenn. I said, are you sure? You know? But seriously, but you know, I think I've shared this with you before. But appreciating people, you know, when you go onto a tube train, you know, just look around the carriage and just think a good thought about everyone in that carriage. You know, my coach used to say, actually say to them, you know, in your head, I love you, or something like that, which may be a bit much for some people to begin with, but it's literally the thought that counts. It's literally making the connection without making a connection that might embarrass you, because you don't necessarily want to go up, but why not, to a complete stranger and say I love you. But you know, what you're doing is you're connecting with them in a way that is, if you like, reinforcing your own love. Because guess what? When you focus, as I said before, when you're focusing on love, this is how you do it. You focus on love in the context of others, right? It's part of you. It's your own love that's being expressed.
Yeah.
And by expressing that love, you are literally giving yourself love, you know?
Yes, it's expressing good wishes. Gratitude is a big one. Appreciation, as you say.
Huge.
You know, there's so much we can do to kind of, you know, just spread kind of good vibes around, which we don't take all the opportunities. Yeah. And we've got to.
Yeah.
You know, we won't feel good about ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, if you go through a day and there's just, even if there's just one kind of interesting exchange, you know, someone you met on the street, you just to help them in this way or that, or there's some little kind of act of kindness. That kind of enriches your whole day. Similarly, if you just do one thing which is just a little negligent, or you know, you pull out in your car in front of someone where you know you could have let them in or something, you just kind of thought, no, I'm here first. Do you feel good about it? Well, no, not negligent. You know, that's but that's just somewhere where you've kind of missed an opportunity. It stays with you. You actually feel the negativity of that. I
always think, though, in those sort of situations, that now I've come to think, which is why I stopped beating myself up about it, that there's a bigger picture, and the bigger picture may be karmic. It may be.
But this gets into a whole different field.
It may be. I know.
And you've got to be very, very careful. You should not.
Me acting as a mirror.
Yeah, you know. Just you know, I you know, if I've had an exchange with someone, you know, and I think that didn't go well, you know, and we're actually, I think afterwards, oh, you know, I could have been nicer, or you know, I could have dealt with that better. You know, it's got to be something I'm going to learn from. And I'm just saying that it doesn't sit well with you for a while, you know? Yeah, of course we forget it, we put these things behind us. But actually, that's not how to enrich. It doesn't enrich our lives, being like that. Whereas any of the positive things really add a boost to the day. We can actually feel really good for a whole day just on one little act of kindness.
Yeah. Something I think I've shared with you before, which is a very powerful technique, and is a great coaching technique as well, by the way. You actually rehearse the conversation you're going to have with someone before you have it. I think I've told you this before. So, even if you're not anticipating a difficult conversation, or maybe there's some tension between you or friction between you, you have the conversation in your head, you give it energy, you give it focus in the way that you'd like it to be. Now, you're not speaking for that person, because that person is still has free will, still has choice, and will come out with whatever he or she comes out with in the conversation. But it's like you've created that space, that energy, if you like, of goodwill, which is in your energy field then, which they will pick up. Now, there's a fantastic, I think I've said this before as well, and forgive me if I have, but there's an amazing guy called Neville Goddard, who actually was around in the 50s and 60s, and quite a few, I think the New Age people will have heard of him. Mentioned, first of all, in a book by Greg Braden called The Divine Matrix, which is very much about quantum physics. But cut a long story short, this guy was around in the 50s, and he was like a lay preacher, and he went around the United States, preaching. And one of his things was, about manifestation, how we manifest what we really want. And he talked about the power of feelings, imagination and feelings, but focusing on the feelings, not on the thoughts. Anyway, cut a long story short, he comes up with this amazing story in one of his books. I think it's called The Power of Awareness, but it may be one of the others. He's written quite a few books. And he talks about this seamstress who is working for this theatrical designer. And the relationship is very bad, She says he doesn't appreciate me, we're always arguing, he doesn't seem to like my work, and everything. And Neville says to her, well, tell me, do you ever have thoughts about this person? And she said, well, yes, every morning before I go to work, I'm talking to myself in my head about how I hate him, and I wish I didn't work there, and he's such a bugger and a bastard and all the rest of it. And of course, there pretty much was the answer. So Neville said to her, right, well, what you do, you have the same conversation every morning, and you say how much you appreciate him. You say how much, that you enjoy working for it, even though it may not be true, but you actually have the conversation that you would like to have rather than the one that's going to make you feel bad, right? So she did this for, I think, 10 or, I can't remember the story, something like 10 or maybe 14 days consecutively. At the end of that time, the guy gave her a promotion, and they had the most fantastic relationship, and that was all she did. All she did was change her own, energy, if you like, by having that conversation with him in her head. She didn't even speak a word to him, but his own attitude completely changed to her as a result of that. So it's an energy thing, you see. It was there in her energy field. And instead of all the bad vibes that she was carrying, which of course unconsciously he was picking up through the energy field, right? Now he's picking up all this wonderful stuff that he's, not seeing or hearing or feeling, but telepathically or unconsciously he's getting, because this is what she's saying. She's putting out into the energy how much she actually likes him or, appreciates him and whatever. And that is so powerful. In any relationship, I would urge people to try that, because it really is very powerful, and it does work. And I can give situations myself, which are one or two very personal situations, so I won't share them here. But even so, it does work, and especially with work relationships. Anyone that you're having tension with or feeling, less than empowered. Ultimately, it's all our own stuff. Yeah. In my view, it's all our own stuff, and there's a lot of projection. But of course, projection works both ways. So you can play with it, Once you recognize it as your projection, you say, well, okay, now I can, if you like, reverse it, turn the camera around, or maybe, turn the telescope around, whatever analogy you like to use, and see it in a different way, and then start playing it in a different way. Act out the scene differently, literally. And that's what she did. She acted out the scene differently. She rewrote the script in her head, and therefore rewrote her reality.